Happy birthday, America. Welcome to the Texas Values Report. I'm Jonathan Covey, Director of Policy here at Texas Values. This week, all across the country, Americans are celebrating Independence Day, one of the greatest experiments in self-government that the world has ever seen. Almost 250 years ago, our founders declared something that completely changed history, that rights don't come from the government, they come from God. And that simple idea still shapes some of the biggest legal and cultural debates that we have in our modern day here in America. In fact, over the last few years, we've seen a real resurgence in liberty in the courts, in the government, and even in the broader culture in America. And that's worth paying attention to, because religious liberty isn't just another issue for people of faith. It's actually one of the foundational issues that helps protect every other freedom that Americans in our modern day and age are able to enjoy. We have so much on the agenda today. We're going to talk about religious freedom. We're going to talk about where it's going. We're going to talk about an incredible U.S. Supreme Court victory. And we're going to talk about President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission, so much more. But a quick reminder for you guys, you can catch us on Facebook, on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, YouTube, all of your favorite live streaming platforms. And if you want updates at Texas Values, you can text TX Values, that's TXVALUES, to 797979. And joining me today is Nathan Shackelford with First Liberty Institute, the largest law firm in the nation dedicated exclusively to protecting religious freedom. You might have also heard of his father, Kelly Shackelford, president of First Liberty Institute. Nathan, he serves as the Associate General Counsel and Director of Development for the organization. He also helped launch their F3 initiative, which is dedicated to educating and equipping communities of young professionals across the nation to defend their religious liberty rights. He's a proud graduate of Texas A&M University and Southern Methodist University's Dedman School of Law. And he also is married to his wife of 10 years, Sarah. They have a 3-year-old son, Harvey, and a 2-month-old daughter, Ava. Nathan, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I got to start this off because this is just really weird. I think this might be more than a coincidence, but I too have a wife named Sarah and a daughter named Ava. And if you think about it, if you take the J-O off of the front of my name is also Nathan. So that's really weird. I feel like if I have a son, I'm now locked into naming him Harvey.
Well, it's a strong name, that's for sure.
Hey, so absolutely glad you're here. Nathan, this feels like a exciting time to be talking about religious liberty, and as we celebrate Independence Day, and we begin America's 250th birthday celebration. It seems like we're watching just a real shift happen. 10 or 15 years ago, it felt like faith was being pushed further and further out of the public square, and today we're seeing Supreme Court victories, protecting prayer, stronger protections for religious employees, states feeling more confident about recognizing our nation's religious heritage, and now a president who created a religious liberty commission to strengthen those protections even more. So my question for you is, when you kind of step back and you look at the big picture, what gives you the most hope about the future of religious liberty in America?
Yeah, I would say there are two things that come to mind on that. The first thing is our courts, just the way that we have seen judges that are now more and more likely to follow the law, especially at the Supreme Court level. If you look at just about any religious freedom case right now at the Supreme Court, it's pretty much 6-3 every time. And when you win at the Supreme Court, you set a precedent that affects the rest of the country. So, for example, we won a case just this past December for a street preacher who was told he couldn't preach the gospel in a public park. He went to go challenge that law, and they said, "Oh, well, because you paid the fine, you don't have the ability to challenge this statute." Well, if that stands, then no one ever is going to be able to stand up against the government. You're always going to lose your rights. And we just won that 9-0 at the Supreme Court. So I would say courts are big. And I would say the second thing that we're seeing is Really, religious liberty is defended by those that are in the workplace and that are raising kids. So those are young professionals. And we're seeing a lot of people as they're developing, growing their families, they're really hungry to know what their rights are and to really be able to live those out. So I think we have parents right now that are more passionate about protecting their faith, knowing what their rights are to express their faith, and passing that down to their kids than we've seen before. And I'd say that is really huge for keeping the legacy going of religious freedom throughout the country.
I think you're right on, absolutely on that. How much credit do you think belongs to the Supreme Court versus, people simply, becoming more willing to just live out their faith in the public square publicly?
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a balance there. If you have judges that are going to follow the law, but everyone's always afraid to take a step up, then what do your rights matter if you're never exercising them? But at the same time, if we have people that are being bold and they have no protection, they're just they're gonna all their rights are gonna be taken away. So you have to have a balance of those. I think we have to have people that are bold and willing to take a stand, but we also need judges that are very bold and willing to take a stand. And I think that's where you see kind of the two of these come together, where you have brave, very brave people that are putting a lot on the line to stand up for their faith, and judges who are now saying, we're going to do the right thing and protect that. So I'd say it's a very delicate balance between the two.
Obviously, we see sort of a shift happening, but is this sort of you think this is sort of a pendulum that's going to swing back, or do you think we're seeing that there's going to be some sort of a lasting, constitutional realignment on the religious freedom front?
Yeah, I mean, I think the quote that comes to mind is from Franklin when he says, "You have a republic if you can keep it." And really, what we have to do is if we stop exercising those rights and we stop enforcing them, that's one thing. Another thing, though, is we've had threats in the past of court packing and of essentially eliminating the Supreme Court as a whole. If you eliminate the court and you put everything in the power of the executive, now all you're going to have is an executive branch that decides what rights you do and don't have. So we really have to protect our First Amendment rights and our constitutional rights, so that that pendulum does not swing back. But with the way the Supreme Court is right now, we're in a good place where it should be in favor of protecting rights. So I think for a while we're safe, but we can't get complacent and say, oh, we're safe, because then that's when it swings back the other way and you lose all your rights.
That's always kind of the case, right? If you have a victory, certainly you want to be able to celebrate that victory and say, okay, this is we're in a better spot now. But you can't get complacent, and because that will swing back. So, what was the saying from one of the founding fathers? Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty, something like that.
Yeah.
We have to continue to be eternally vigilant. And I think one of the biggest developments this year, well, I guess the last couple of years, has been President Trump's Religious Liberty Commission. Your dad has served on that commission, and just recently, the commission presented their report to President Trump. So for those of us, or for those who have only seen maybe a headline or two on this, what's the what is the Religious Liberty Commission? What was it created to accomplish?
Yeah, really, it's the first of its kind commission that was created really to look at what's going on with religious liberty in the country, what's the state of it, and what can be done about it. And the thing that was important about this was most commissions, when they're created, they're just kind of nice and they don't really do much. They don't report to the president, they report to some executive agency. But this reported directly back to Trump in the White House. And so the big thing here was what changes can we bring that aren't just going to last for, the rest of this administration, but what are things that can be longer lasting? And how can we make sure that religious freedom is protected for generations to come? So it's really big for what it means for the future of our country and really looking at more than just his presidency, but looking at the future of religious freedom in the country.
What was there anything that, as you saw sort of the proceedings going on with the commission, anything that surprised you, anything that was any theme worth mentioning that really stood out?
Yeah, I would say no matter how long you do what we do, you hear all kinds of stories, but there are still stories that really resonate with you. And I think that's what was so big at the commission. You can actually go back and watch all of the commission hearings on YouTube or on the DOJ's website. And when you hear the stories of people, that's what really makes uh, a difference is just hearing it directly from people. And when you hear a story from a fifth grade boy who was just put in a terrible position, uh, that really resonated with me. And so I think you guys have the clip. If you can roll that clip of Shay and Cenas at the commission.
Thank you again, Mr. President. Hi, I'm Shane Cetus. I've been a Christian my whole life, and Jesus means everything to me. When I was in fifth grade, my school forced me to teach my kindergarten buddy about changing his gender using a book called My Shadow is Pink. The book said you can choose your gender based on feelings instead of how God made us. I knew this was not right, but I was afraid of getting in trouble. After my family spoke up, the school treated us badly, and kids started bullying me and my brother because of our faith. And the school did nothing to stop it. It hurt a lot, but I kept trusting God. I believe kids like me should be able to live our faith at school without being forced to go against what we believe. I hope no other family has to go through what mine did. Thank you.
What a what a courageous little boy. I mean, but he never should have been put in that position.
Oh, absolutely.
That's
Yeah, he
that's an extremely an extremely interesting thing to see. To just know that that we're fighting back against that, and to it's really motivational and really inspirational that that we get an opportunity to be able to stand up for folks in those types of situations.
Absolutely. Yeah, his story is just one that has stuck out with me, and with lots around the country too. But really, that's what I think was so powerful about the commission is hearing firsthand from people like Shay of all the things that were happening, and that's what really makes it real.
Absolutely. I mean, it just brings it home and makes it just completely real. I mean, you being a father, me as well as I, just really realizing the position that people can be put in. I think this is an extremely important work that the Religious Liberty Commission is doing. And now that they've delivered their report to President Trump, without sort of getting lost in all the details, what are two or three of those of the recommendations in that report that you think that Americans should know about, our listeners even should know about?
Yeah, the full list, and there's a nice summary of some of them too. I think you guys will have the links to those. But just to give you kind of the top couple ones, I think something we've seen really on the rise across the country is an attack on parental rights. So one thing that we did in this was there is now a religious liberty hotline that they're recommending be set up so that teachers and students can report these types of things, and parents can report these types of things directly to the executive branch, so that people can be investigated as these things happen. So I think that's huge. And also asking the DOJ to issue guidance on parental rights. It's something we've seen the Supreme Court do with our case that we had for the Amish in New York, that they were told they had to vaccinate their kids. We're seeing that across the country. So being able to have ways to now show people that really they have the right to raise their kids according to their faith, is huge. And then I would say another thing is judges. They talked about judges and how we need to focus on getting judges that will follow the law. And that was a big one. And then another one in the military that was big was streamlining religious accommodations and making it so that those are easier for the military service people to get who are so bravely putting everything on the line for us every day.
Now you mentioned judges a couple of times, and also then the commission recommendation mentioned judges. Tell me just how that works. The president appoints federal judges. Are we talking federal judges primarily, or was the recommendation going towards something else as well?
Yeah, primarily federal because the federal level is where you're going to get when you're dealing with First Amendment issues. So when you're dealing with religious freedom, a lot of times that's going to be removed to the federal level. So we want to make sure we have really good federal judges in place that are vetted. And that's actually something that First Liberty does. Is we have one of the largest judicial vetting divisions in the country that looks at every judge and says, is this person going to follow the law? What's their background?
Yep.
Unbiased, just trying to help people make good decisions when it comes to the nomination and selection of judges.
Excellent, excellent. Glad that you guys are help leading the charge on that. I mentioned this. Let's switch topics real quick. I mentioned this briefly during the lead-in, but I have to ask you about what I think is probably one of the most significant Supreme Court decisions we've seen in quite some time. So the court just came out with a decision a couple days ago in the Hecox BPJ case, and this is a tremendous victory for women and girls, and it affirms that Congress use the word sex in Title IX, and that word has an objective meaning rooted in biological male and biological female. And so that got me to thinking, we've seen the court take a very similar approach in religious liberty cases, looking to that original meaning of the Constitution and our nation's historical understanding, for example, of the Establishment Clause. So are we watching a Supreme Court that is increasingly committed to interpreting the laws in a way that were actually written and understood when they are adopted?
Yeah, I would say that we've seen a shift in that in the Supreme Court to where a lot of a vast majority of these judges now, instead of asking, how can I bend this to fit what I want it to be, is what does the Constitution say?
Yeah.
And I think that there's sometimes that we see that the side that they think the Constitution says something that it doesn't, but they were trying to do that. But I think we see an intent to return back to what the Constitution says, what rights we have as a nation, and really protecting those versus how can I do this to serve my agenda. We saw a ton of that during the kind of that Roe v. Wade type area. So many decisions saying,
Yep.
well, we think it should be this, even though it doesn't say that. And now we're seeing those things repealed and overturned, saying, let's actually look at what the Constitution says. And I think this is a great example of that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision as well. That sort of took that frame, and then you have, of course, the Kennedy v. Bremerton test. You guys were heavily involved in, and bringing the Lemon test back, or actually getting rid of the Lemon test and going back to a history and tradition test, where we think the Supreme Court believed the founders originally intended, and of course that's opened up a number of religious liberty, religious freedom opportunities as well, and then all of this, of course, the women's sports issue just being a huge issue that Texas Values has fought, and our team has fought for a number of years, and we now in Texas have this law protecting women and girls. One of our teammates, Mary Counsel, was very integral in helping pass the state law on this, and so now we have states that are passing these laws, and the Supreme Court is saying no. They're saying absolutely these laws are constitutional. They're able to be upheld, and according to the original meaning of Title IX in the Establishment Clause, they're absolutely constitutional. They go back to that meaning, that originality. So I think that we're moving in a very positive direction in terms of where the court is at right now. And we're talking, guys, with Nathan Shackelford from First Liberty Institute. If you find value in the work that we do, we're going to ask you to go to our website at txvalues.org and drop us a donation. That helps us keep quality folks on our team, as well as get to talk to quality folks like Nathan here, who are just doing fantastic work on religious freedom, pro-life, pro-family, parental rights, so many other things. And if you want to get more involved in our work, you can go to Texas Values University. That's our online training program that helps you graduate to a higher level of citizenship and continue getting involved. We talk about all the time, government belongs to those who show up. So if you got to know what you're doing to be able to show up. Nathan, I want to Real quick, I got one more question for you. You know, we talked about the Presidential Commission. We talked about some of these legal victories, but ultimately, religious liberty is it's not just the job of judges and lawyers. So what is your encouragement to our listeners, our supporters, everyday Americans who want to protect this first freedom?
Yeah, I would say the only way that we have rights is if they're exercised. And so if you want to live out your faith, you have the right to do so in this country. It's the only country that you have the free right to do that. And if you're ever unsure on things and you're wondering, do I have the right to do this? Do I not? You're always free to reach out to us at First Liberty and we can advise. But we want people to live out their faith boldly and know that if they get in a situation where they need someone to come and take their back, that we can do that and people don't have to put their life savings on the line because we're a nonprofit. And so we can come behind people and defend them and do all of that. But we have to have people that are going to be bold and take a stand. And so I would say this is the best time for religious freedom, possibly in the history of our nation since the founding. And we really need to walk in that to make sure that we keep those rights and advance religious liberty forward for generations to come.
Live out your faith boldly without fear. I think that's a great way to wrap this. Nathan, thank you for all the work that you're doing and the principled stands that First Liberty Institute takes every day in so many arenas. We just appreciate you joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You know, we've been talking with Nathan Shackelford, First Director of Development from First Liberty Institute, and we're very grateful for that organization. We're very grateful for their legal prowess that they bring to the courts every day for religious liberty. I want to remind you guys we have some upcoming events, at least one big one. Don't forget about our Texas Faith Fest. This is the annual conference that we do. We have a great lineup of speakers that are getting lined up for you guys. It's going to be at Park Social in Cedar Park this year. This is a different venue than we've been at before, and it's going to be September 25th for the dinner, and then we'll have September 26th, the forum from 9 to 5. So we're going to have a dinner on Friday night, and then we'll have all day Saturday going on our policy forum. We hope you guys can join us. We would be grateful, and you can go ahead and go on our website and sign up now. Get it locked in. Get the price locked in as well. And we will look forward to seeing you guys in September. But before we wrap up today's program, I want to leave you with one final thought. You know, this week, the United States Supreme Court handed down what I think will be remembered as one of the most significant decisions in recent years. This is the BPJ, the women's sports case. The court upheld laws protecting girls and women's sports by recognizing that until recently, something that would have been self-evident until recently, Congress used the word sex in Title IX, and it meant biological, male and biological female. Now, whether the issue is women's sports or religious liberty, I think there's a bigger story here unfolding. For many Americans, many Americans have watched the courts drift away from asking, what does the law actually say? Instead, too often the question from these progressive courts became, how should we interpret the law to fit today's cultural preferences? And that is not what you want to be asking at all. But increasingly now today, we have the Supreme Court asking a different question. They're asking, what did the people who founded our country and wrote this law mean when they wrote it? That's the original understanding, and that's going back to the founders' intention. That's exactly what we've seen in religious liberty cases. The court has moved away from legal tests that had little basis in the Constitution's text or its history, and they returned to interpreting the First Amendment according to our nation's history and traditions. And in this women's sports case in BPJ, we saw the same judicial philosophy applied towards Title IX and towards the Establishment Clause. The court didn't rewrite the statute. They interpreted the words according to the original and ordinary meaning. So whether you're talking about the Establishment Clause or Title IX or any other law, that's how constitutional government is supposed to work. Legislatures write the laws, judges interpret the laws. So as we celebrate Independence Day and we begin America's 250th birthday celebration, this is something that's worth remembering. Our founders believed that liberty could only survive if the rule of law survived. They believed that our rights come from an almighty God, not from a government, and that government itself must remain bound by the Constitution and the laws that enacted those people's representatives. So 250 years later from the beginning of our nation, those principles still matter. They still matter. And America has faced wars, we've faced economic crises and deep political disagreements all across our entire existence. Yet the Constitution has endured. And because it's endured, because generation after generation has chosen to preserve it rather than redefine it. So we're in our generation, guys. Now is our turn. It's our turn. As we celebrate this Independence Day, let's be grateful not only for the freedoms that we enjoy, but also for the constitutional principles that protect those freedoms. And let's commit that as we go forward, we are going to be there on the front lines, preserving those principles again and again over the next 250 years. Happy Independence Day, everyone. God bless Texas, and God bless the United States of America.